Right after we count the Omer, we say this chapter of Tehillim. So that's what made me think of studying it for this Shear. There's also a custom to say this kapitel of Tehillim on a Motzei Shabbos after we say Havdalah, to say this chapter of Tehillim because it speaks about salvation and brachas and all good things that we want for the coming week. There is also a custom Nusach Hari. So if you daven Nusach Hari, we say this chapter of Tehillim right after Al Naharos Babel when we bench on a time that it's not, when we're not saying Tachanun, in other words, when we're not saying Shir Malos. Often this chapter of Tehillim is written in the shape of a menorah with its seven branches and placed on the stender where the chazan is going to daven. And it says that when we are saying this kapitel of Tehillim, we should actually envision in our minds a menorah with its seven branches. The reason that we have this custom of making it on putting it into the shape of a menorah is because of the visions that both David HaMelech and Moshe Rabbeinu both were shown. They were both shown a vision of the menorah, and each branch of the menorah had one of the psukim from this kapitel of Tehillim, and it was engraved on a golden plate. So David HaMelech, he took that vision and he engraved it onto his shield. And it says that when he went out to war, every time he concentrated on this kapitel of Tehillim, his enemies just fell before him. Moshe Rabbeinu says that when he saw this same vision, this kapitel of Tehillim, on a menorah, in the seven branches of the menorah, he also saw the Hanukkah story. He saw that the Greeks were going to try and go for the Jews, and he also saw that they would fall eventually. And he davened very, very hard for the Chashmonaim that they should win the war, that they shouldn't get overtaken by the Greeks. And one of the parts of his prayer was that the Chashmonaim, who were Kohanim, should be able to be blessed themselves with the blessing that the Kohanim give to us, and that they should again be able to bless the Jews with the Birkas Kohanim. And then it says that this was what inspired this kapitel of Tehillim. And so if you have a look just briefly at the kapitel of Tehillim, this chapter 67 has got a lot of similarities to Birkas Kohanim, to the priestly blessing. So just to say some of them, the very first line, with the introduction, it's not really part of the chapter, Lam Natseach Binginot Mismo Shear. If you look at the first letter of each of the words, a lamed, a beis, a mem, and a shin, and you scramble them around, you get the word b'shalom, which means peace. And that's the biggest part of the Birkas Kohanim. It ends off, the Kohanim wish us everything, and the main thing that they wish us, the last word, is b'shalom, that we should, whatever brachas we have, whatever brachas we need, we should have the container for all brachas, which is shalom, which is peace. So that's our first hint, or alluding to Birkas Kohanim in this chapter of Tehillim. Then it says that the word Yahanenu, to bless us, appears 3 times in this chapter of Tehillim, 3 times alluding to the 3 words in the first line of Birkat Kohanim, Yevarechecha, Hashem, V'yishmerecha, right? That's the 3 things. The word Elokim, Hashem's name, appears 5 times in this chapter, and that is alluding, it's hinting to the 5 words in the second line of Birkas Kohanim, Ya'er Hashem Panav Elecha V'choneka, right? The 5 words. And then there are 7 psukim in this chapter, excluding the introduction, the heading, and that is hinting at the 7 words in the last line of Birkat Kohanim, Yisa Hashem Panav Elecha V'yasem Lacha Shalom. 7 words. So this is very closely connected to Birkas Kohanim. Also the fact that it has seven psukim. So the commentaries that this hints to the 7 branches of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, which the Kohanim lit. And the Abu Draham says that anytime we say this chapter of Tehillim with thinking about the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, we get reward as though we are the Kohen who's lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Why is this chapter said during Sfiras HaOmer? So there are many different answers that are brought explaining why. But the cutest one, if we could say it that, the 7 psukim, the seven psukim allude to the 7 weeks of the Omer. And then if you go and you count the words in this chapter, and I really did to make sure, there are 49 words in this chapter for allude to the 49 days of the Omer. And it says that every single day, as you know, we move up 1 midah. So we move like from chesed and chesed, right? We move up all those. And that is, we are entering a new gate of Bina, of understanding. Bina, the gematria, the numerical value of the word Bina, Beis, a Yud, a Nun, and a Hey, is 2 and 10 and 50 and 5, which brings us to 67. And this is chapter 67. So it says this is one of the reasons, the choice of this chapter of Tehillim to accompany our counting of the Omer. Another thing that I found, which you could just say is a little bit amusing, it says that if a person has kadochas, I don't know what that means. I think it means cholera. But then this is a chapter of Tehillim that they should say that will bring them a refuah shlema, make them well. So now the chapter itself. Different to most of the chapters of Tehillim, because the majority of chapters of Tehillim are like David has a crisis. He's being chased by Shaul, he's being chased by Avshalom, something bad has happened to him, and yet he's able to look at the good, he's able to concentrate on the good, and he's able to sing praise to Hashem. And that's probably the majority of Tehillim. But this chapter of Tehillim is a happy chapter. No, it's not because of any crisis. It's not because of any big episode that happened. It's simply a happy chapter of Tehillim. And it's David, either depending on which explanation you follow, either David is praying for or he is prophesying the coming of Mashiach. And he's speaking about it. He's speaking about how this is going to happen and how great it's going to be when it happens. The different commentaries explain what is happening in this chapter of Tehillim. The Radak says that this is speaking particularly about the miracle of Kibbutz Golios, the ingathering of everybody who's in exile, and says that that's what he sees in that when Hashem gathers in all the exiles, this is going to be the greatest thing, that everyone in the world is just going to be happy and see and acknowledge Hashem and his greatness. And that's what this chapter of Tehillim is talking about. The Alshich says similarly, he says it's talking about Mashiach time, and he says that in Mashiach time there will be what we call shefa brachos, is the word that he uses, like an unbelievable abundance of blessing in the world, and the blessing will be on the Jews, and everybody, the Jews, the Goyim, everyone in the world will acknowledge Hashem. It will be obvious, godliness will be obvious, and everyone will be happy, right? This is the happy chapter. So let's look at it. Let's look at it inside and take some lessons and learnings from it. So the introduction to the chapter begins Lamnatseach bin Ginois Mismo Shear, for the conductor, right? So whenever we see a chapter of Tehillim beginning with the word Lamnatseach, we know immediately that this is one of the chapters of Tehillim that would be sung in the Beis Hamikdash, that the Levim would sing it. And then there were very specific ways of tunes and music that would go with it. And here clearly David HaMelech says to play on an instrument called the Neginot. One of the string instruments that were used by the Levim in the Beis Hamikdash. We've also said this before, and I think it's a nice thing to repeat that Lamnatseach, we should always read it not just as for the conductor, but Menatseach is somebody who is successful. And so Lamnatseach, for the one who is successful. In other words, when Mashiach comes, we will all be Lamnatseach. We will all be the successful ones. And we'll all be singing Shear, Mismo, Shear, songs of gratitude, songs of greatness to the Eibishter. May that be soon. We also have spent some time before talking about the difference between a Mismo and a Shear, why it says, so some chapters of Tehillim begin with the word Mismo, like Mismo LeDavid, and some have the word Shear, it's a song, and we've commented on that before. Here in this capital, we have both. It says Mismo, Shear. So what is Mismo, Shear? What is going to be the big difference between them? So Mismo is more of a tune than an actual song. Mismo is when there's a tune being sung and there's music being played with it, and Shear is when it's something higher actually than a Mismo, when it not necessarily have musical accompaniment, but it will be just humans or just people or just souls, as however we're going to explain it, singing the song without the physical musical instruments. So I guess like a cappella. So now we want to look a little bit more deeply at what is the difference between a Mismo and a Shear. And in Kabbalah, it's written that Mismo is the song of the angels and Shear is the song of the souls. So actually, a Shear, a song that the souls are singing, is much more intense, is much higher than the song of angels, because we know that humans can be much greater than angels if they choose to be. Also, another explanation for this, the difference between Mismo and Shear, is that Mismo is the song of the time that we're living in, and Shear is a song of the future. So you know that we say that in the Haggadah, we say it in quite a few places where we say, then we will sing the Shear Chadash, a new song. So it's talking about the song of Mashiach time. And the important lesson in this, Mismo, Shear, having both of those concepts together, is that while we wait for Mashiach, we have to already start living like little bits of Mashiach. So Mismo, Shear, when we look at this capital of Tehillim, this chapter of Tehillim, we have to think to ourselves that it's not just a lesson about what will be, but it has to start now. Mismo, now we have to take lessons from it. And Shear, of course, what we really want is that it should be Shear, it should be the time of Mashiach already. So that's the introduction to this chapter of Tehillim. And then, as we said, it's a short chapter of Tehillim, but it's got quite a few very deep lessons in it. So it begins, Elokim Yahanenu, Hashem, and we're going to see how we want to translate the word Yahanenu. Be gracious to us would be the simple way. Vivarchenu, and bless us. Ya'er pranavi tanu Selah. Illuminate your face on us, Selah. So what does this actually mean when we're asking of Hashem, Yahanenu and Vivarchenu? And so the commentaries all discuss what is the difference between Yahanenu and Vivarchenu. So simply, the majority of the opinions are that Yahanenu is talking about the spiritual greatness that we want, that we're asking Hashem to give us, that He should illuminate us, our eyes, understand Torah, understand mitzvahs, become great spiritually. And Vivarchenu, and bless us, is talking about the physical things that we need. So while we need spirituality and we need our eyes to be open to Torah and mitzvahs, and we need to connect to Hashem, David HaMelech acknowledges over here that we also need physical blessing. We also need health and money and all the physical things in order to be able to appreciate the spiritual things. So that's the double use, Yahanenu Vivarchenu. Give us spirituality and also give us ordinary physical blessing. Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch says that Yahanenu is speaking particularly that we're asking Hashem for intellect. We want to be clever. And he says, interestingly, that for Jews especially, being clever is important. It's very important. And how does he come with this concept that Yahanenu means that we're asking Hashem for intellectual cleverness? He says every day in the davening, we ask Hashem, we say, Ata chaynen la'adam da'as, you give humans da'as, you give humans knowledge. In other words, what Rosh Hashanah Hirsch is saying to us is that we have to acknowledge that intellect is a gift from Hashem. Ata chaynen, you grace us with da'as, with knowledge. So no one can be, or no one should be proud of themselves when they're clever, because they should understand that Hashem gives it to us. And it is a prayer that Hashem should give it to us. Yahanenu, give us, help us to become clever. And then he agrees that Vivarchenu is referring to physical, material things that we need or that we want. And then I saw a beautiful Chassidish explanation of what it means. Elokim Yahanenu says that in Yiddish there is expression we want to say about somebody that they have chen. It's very hard to translate that to English. What does it mean when we say someone has chen? It means we look at them and we just see their goodness, we see their good midas, we see their decent behavior. We see something above average in a person when we say they have chen. And what are we asking Hashem over here? Elokim Yahanenu. Hashem, give us chen. Give us that extra, give us that something more, that extra midah. And where does that chen come from? Elokim, it comes from God. So what we're actually asking Hashem for over here is that we're asking Hashem that he should give us a little bit of his midah of chen, of graciousness is the way we translate it, but however else you want to explain it. And he continues, David HaMelech, and he says over here, what do we need all of this for? He says, Lada'as ba'aretz darkecha, so that it should be made known in the land your ways, b'chol goyim, among all nations, Yeshua secha, your salvation. Strange request. What does it mean? We're asking Hashem, Lada'as ba'aretz darkecha, that we should know his ways in the world. So if you don't think about it too much, then you understand it at the simplest, which is not so simple level, Lada'as ba'aretz darkecha. We understand then that our avodah, our job in this world, is to make everybody know about Hashem. Lada'as ba'aretz darkecha, to let everybody know that there's a Hashem in the world. It's our job to be constantly making Kiddush Hashem. We can't hide from the fact that we are Yidden, and wherever we go and whatever we do, we're representatives of Hashem. We can't hide from it. Everybody can recognize, you can pick out a Jew from anywhere, everywhere. I often think of a time that I went, it was my son Shmuli's bar mitzvah, and I needed to get him a suit, and I went to the Oriental Plaza with my mom, and I thought like it was the time. Sorry, if you don't mind muting yourself, because we're getting noise. I'm sorry. Managed. Okay. So I went to the Oriental Plaza, and it was the time of the Intifada. I was like really nervous. And I said to Shmuli, don't wear a yarmulke, wear a cap and tuck your tzitzis in, like no one should know we're Jewish. And in fact, didn't want Yosef to come with because for sure people would recognize that he's Jewish, but me and Shmuli, we could go like no one would know we're Jewish, right? And we came to the Oriental Plaza and we went into a suit shop, and I asked the guy, do you sell suits for little boys? And he looked at Shmuli and he said, "Oh, young man, is it your bar mitzvah coming up?" Quickly understood that you can't go anywhere without somebody knowing who you are and that you're Jewish. And that's why our job in this world is lada'as ba'aretz darkecha. We are obligated to make a Kiddush Hashem wherever we go, so that anyone who looks at us and says Jew also says something positive next to it. So that would be the simplest understanding of it. Some of the commentaries go one step further and they say it's actually our job to spread the word of Hashem in the world, that we actually, whether it's among Jews or it's among non-Jews, our job is to spread the word of that there is Hashem in the world, because Goyim are also supposed to and do respect and acknowledge Hashem. So that's the first level of understanding, that da'as ba'aretz darkecha. Another slightly deeper level of understanding this concept of la da'as ba'aretz darkecha, to know in the world your ways, is that we are obligated to intellectually try to understand Hashem. Now, this is a very dangerous line that I just said, so don't take it out of context, but we know that our belief in Hashem, the foundation of it is what we call emunah pshuta. We simply got to believe. And why do we simply have to believe? Is because we cannot possibly understand Hashem. As my husband tells me often when I make that comment, I don't understand what Hashem is doing. He says, would you like a God that you could understand everything? And honestly, sometimes I would. But God is much bigger than us. And there's no possible way that we can understand God completely. But that doesn't absolve us from trying to understand God's greatness. And so we actually, like da'as ba'aretz darkecha, we have an obligation to study and to learn about Hashem and to learn about Hashem's greatness and to learn what Hashem wants from us. Lada'as, to get knowledge, something besides for just plain belief, to get knowledge about Hashem, so that we can appreciate Him and His ways even more. And a third level, and this comes from the Al-Sheikh. The Al-Sheikh asks, he says, what on earth is David HaMelech talking about? What does it mean that we should know Hashem's ways? What Hashem is much too big for us to understand Hashem's ways. And he answers, Hashem's way is that din and rachamim are one thing. They interwoven. Hashem's way, the derech of Hashem, is that judgment and kindness, mercy is one and the same thing. And this is something that we've got to keep on trying to understand. So for us humans, din and rachamim are two separate things. We see it very much that either a person is being blessed or they're suffering, right? Or they having neither at this particular moment. But we see it as two very different things. And the Al-Sheikh says the difference of Hashem's way and our way is that Hashem is able to interweave, to put both of these things together, din and rachamim. While we live in Galus, while we are in exile, it is absolutely impossible to understand that properly, because intellectually we can understand it. The Al-Sheikh says you can go studying it, you can talk about it, and you can explain to people that even when Hashem makes somebody suffer, Rahman al-Islam, he's doing it for a kind reason, and we have all these fancy explanations for it. I often say, if you want to get a lot of people to come to a shir that you give, tell them that you'll be able to explain why Hashem does harsh things to good people, and you'll have a crowd at the door, right? That everybody is trying to try and understand, how does Hashem weave together din and rachamim? And we cannot ever come with a good explanation. We might find an explanation that's good for a few minutes, but then it won't work so well anymore. So while we're in Galus, it's impossible to understand this. And therefore, says the Al-Sheikh, this pasuk is a proof that this chapter of Tehillim is talking about Mashiach time, because only in Mashiach time will we be able to understand, we'll have clarity and be able to understand what it means that din and rachamim are woven together. In the meantime, the Galus job that we have is to keep on trying to pull out little bits and to try and understand that there's din and rachamim, and that Hashem does rachamim at the same time that He does din. And we keep on trying to find little hints for ourselves that Hashem is merciful even when it seems to be carrying out harshness and difficulties. But we have to also know in our heads that what we're really wishing for is the time when that we will be able to understand Hashem's ways in the world. He continues and he says, Pasuk Daled, Yeducha Amim Elokim, nations will know you, God, Yeducha Amim Kulam, all nations will know you. And this is again a hint to the time when Mashiach comes, but it already has to begin during Golus time, that everybody recognizes Hashem. So it says about Mashiach time, that everybody will know about Hashem, whether you are a Jew or a non-Jew, whether you're a good Jew or you're not a good Jew, whether you're an observant, whether you are someone who studies, whoever you are, when Mashiach comes, we will all know who Hashem is. All humanity will know. He says, all nations will rejoice because nations will be judged fairly, and nations will be happy in the world. So this is again hinting at the time when Mashiach comes and everything is going to be good in the world. Now it's interesting to take notice of how this capital is divided. If you following, you'll see that the first two psukim, Aleph and Beis, end with the word Selah. Then we have another 3 psukim, and again we have at the end of Pasuk Hey, it ends with the word Selah. And then we have the final 3 verses, and each of them is talking about something different. So the first 2 psukim is talking about the Jews recognizing Hashem and appreciating Hashem. The next 3 psukim is talking about the Goyim, or all of humanity, recognizing and appreciating Hashem. And then finally, it's talking about the last 3 psukim is very specifically talking about Mashiach time. And the Alshich explains, he says, why is this capital written like this? He says, because this is a progression. First of all, the Jews have to recognize and appreciate Hashem. When they're doing it properly, the next natural step of what will happen is that the Goyim and the rest of humanity will recognize and appreciate Hashem. And then Hashem will bring Mashiach. That's when Mashiach will come. And this is the order. And this shows us our huge responsibility that in order for Mashiach to come, we have to really start now recognizing and appreciating Hashem. And then the last few psukim over here says, Eretz Nosna Yevula, the land will give forth its produce. Yavarchenu Elokim Elokeinu. Bless us, Hashem, our God. Yavarchenu Elokim. Bless us, Hashem. V'yiru Isa kol afsei aretz. And all the ends of the earth will fear him. And it speaks, it's telling us very clearly that prosperity comes as a result of recognizing Hashem and having unity, the Yidden and the Goyim having unity. And the commentaries immediately tell us that when there is no unity, there is no physical blessing. The Gemara actually says, and I find it so interesting for us, that when there's civil war, there will also be famine. And if you think about it, that's the story of the continent of Africa. Civil war and famine hand in hand. So when the civil war is destroying the people, and then right after that, there's a famine destroying them further. Civil war and famine come together. This is Hashem brings blessing into the world as a result of our behavior. And when there is not good behavior, then Hashem doesn't necessarily bring blessing into the world. So that's at a very plain, ordinary level of understanding that when it says over here, Eretz Nosna Yevula, that the land will give its produce, talking about that when Mashiach comes, and we'll have reached that stage of deserving Mashiach, that one of the good things that will happen is that the world will give its produce. Blessing will just be obvious for everyone to see. And the Medrash goes one step further and says that it won't just be ordinary blessing, but it will be oversized blessing. So I don't know how many of you have seen, my children had a book when they were growing up with it was called What Will Be When Mashiach Comes. And in it, like one of the pictures that stand out in my mind is that there was a watermelon with step ladders all up the side of it. And whenever anyone wanted watermelon, they would climb up the step ladder to get their watermelon. So, like, you think that that's just a story that you're telling children, that the watermelons are going to be so big that you have to go on a step ladder to cut them. But the Medrash says this is so, right? That the physical things of the world are going to be Yavula, their produce is going to be so great. Okay, the land is going to give so much greatness that godliness, spirituality will be seen in the physicality. The Medrash also talks about the fact that things that we want, like the one specific one, it says that bread will grow in our gardens. We don't have to go to the effort of planting wheat and then harvesting the wheat and making flour and then making your bread. But you could have a garden in your backyard that grows rye bread, or that grows sourdough bread, or whatever it is that you fancy. And the Medrash goes so far as to say that you'll go out into your garden and you'll pick it, and it will still be warm and fresh, right? This is Mashiach time. I also grew up with a book called Hindi, Mindy, and Lindy, talking about Mashiach time, and in that book, the children spoke about sweets growing from the trees. And often we think that these are things that are told, that we tell the children to make them want Mashiach. And actually, our commentaries tell us, no, this is a world that's going to, everything of it is going to be so obviously godly, and so obviously that Hashem is blessing us, and we're going to see godliness. It's going to make so much sense to us. This is the world Yahanenu that Hashem has blessed, Kol Asaretz, from all ends of the earth. May that happen speedily in our days. And that brings us to the end of this capital of Tehillim.
I've got an announcement to make, please. Jesse's younger daughter, by the name of Kavila, is no bloody idiot.
What?
It has.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay.